Move over to James Robinson, another guy in a backfield where you had the projected RB1 go down, now takes over. We haven't talked about him yet on the show. I think we've taken him in a few places in our drafts, but to me, he now becomes that perfect third, fourth round running back. I put him in the same tier with Miles Sanders, who Miles Sanders for me is firmly at the top of this tier. But then after that, you get Chris Carson, David Montgomery, Josh Jacobs. And I think Robinson is closer to Sanders and Carson than he is Monty and Jacobs, because he showed last year that, look, even though he is this undrafted miracle story, he showed that he has the size, he has the speed, he has the durability to get it done in the NFL in all facets of the game. And one of the reasons people are potentially fading J-Rob is because of Carlos Hyde. And look, Urban Meyer loves this guy. The Ohio State connection is definitely there between these two. But when you look at Carlos Hyde as a player, he's about to turn 31 years old. He's inefficient through the air and on the ground last season in what should have been a great smash situation for him in Seattle. But I do think he'll get some work. But that's not an indictment on J-Rob as that high-end RB2 coming off a top 5 fantasy season where he saw 240 carries, 60 targets, had 86% of the Jacksonville opportunities in that backfield. Even if you hate Carlos Hyde, he's going to get some work in this offense, but not enough that you should fade J-Rob now that Etienne's out for the year.
Yeah, it's all about the value, because looking into the situation, I'm with you. I love J-Rob at his ADP. I think he's absolutely fine to take there, and there's no way I'm fading him completely for Carlos Hyde. But when you look at last season, I mean, James Robinson was competing with Chris Thompson and Dare Ogunbowale. So to your point about the opportunity share, like, James Robinson truly was everything in this backfield. And even if Carlos Hyde comes in and gets a little bit more work than the guys did last year, I mean, if he's in for 15 to 20 to 25% of the carries, like, that's going to be enough to make J-Rob, more of an RB2 than he was an RB1 last year. Because to me, it's all about comparing these players versus their value versus their ADP. And I like James Robinson, but it's just not realistic. Like, you have to set your expectations. It's not realistic to think he's going to repeat what he did last season. So as long as you know that Carlos Hyde's probably going to be in a little bit more than you want if you watched a lot of J-Rob last year, as long as you know that, you're going to be fine drafting him as an RB2, kind of in that third or fourth tier of running backs, like you said, with the guys like Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs. But when I look at James Robinson and the touchdown upside this season, I originally went into it thinking like, oh, the offense is going to be much more efficient this year. They're going to score more points. So there should be more touchdown upside. But I'm actually not so sure about that, because J-Rob somehow last season, for a team that was 30th in the NFL in scoring, he still scored 10 touchdowns in his 14 games. Like, this guy was electric last season, and he found the end zone. He had a nose for the end zone. He had more touchdowns than Zeke, more touchdowns than J.K. Dobbins, as many as David Montgomery. So right now I have J-Rob projected at 11 touchdowns, so it is a little bit better than last season. The hope with J-Rob and the upside for J-Rob is that if he does cede a little bit more work to Carlos Hyde, that maybe he gives you that extra touchdown or two to push him over the top and give him potentially, in a best case scenario, top 10 running back upside for 2021. So he's someone I love taking as a running back too. We know the volume's going to be there. And if things break the right way and he's able to get into the end zone for this Jacksonville offense that should be much improved, that's how he's going to get it done for you in fantasy and exceed the value where you got him in your draft.
And the reason we're in on this Jacksonville offense is because of all their ADPs with this unknown of Trevor Lawrence, the unknown of Urban Meyer, is actually depressing their values enough where they become interesting gambles for where they're going in your draft. If you do take James Robinson, if you do take Laviska Shenault, who we both love, we've talked about him a ton on this channel, just pray that Jacksonville can be functional enough and that Urban Meyer can be competent enough to give James Robinson the ball and actually keep this offense moving. Also add in the fact that Marvin Jones is hurt and DJ Chark has a broken hand. So those two things could play into James Robinson potentially getting a little bit more target volume to start the season.